welcome back to the channel. We're out here in South Austin with Kylee. Kylee has been homeless for about 8.5, almost 9 years, addicted to meth during that time. And she's been sober and housed now for how many years?
Housed for 6.5 and sober for 3.5. 6.5
years. So she's doing good. So we're gonna talk to her and get her story and see what life is about on the streets. And if you would please go out and like this video and share it. Getting the word out, especially about people that's in recovery, is extremely important. It gives people hope and it helps people. So that's what we're trying to do here. So Kylee, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I grew up in a little town in New Mexico. I moved here in December '93. Been here off and on since then. I've been married twice. I've got 4 kids, 2 grandbabies, and I spent, even with having everything going for me, I got myself messed up with drugs. Yeah. And ended up on the street.
That's easy to do, getting messed up on the streets. It's a slippery slope. It's very easy to do. So, what in the beginning? What led you to become homeless? That many years ago. What was the catalyst?
There was a lot of things. Basically, when it comes down to it, is I did not have the proper coping skills to deal with life, and life came at me, and I had a lot of tragedies happen all at once. Yeah. And growing up, I grew up around a lot of addiction and alcohol, and so I went through the first coping mechanism that I knew, and I started with alcohol, and that got really bad, and I ended up dating. My marriage fell apart, and I got with somebody, and started getting mixed up with coke and eventually heroin. Yeah. And it just was a slippery slope. And what was your main drug of choice that you were using? Alcohol was believe it or not, of everything that I've ever done, alcohol was the hardest for me. Right. And everything, to the point where it's scary to say it, heroin was actually like the lesser of 2 evils, because the first time I did a shot of heroin, I didn't want another drink of alcohol. Right.
And just so took over your life. It took over,
and I started doing heroin a lot. Yeah. And a lot of MDMA and a lot of partying and stuff like that, and it was just like the attitude of, I'm not hurting anybody else, but so what does it matter? Right. I can do what I want. And I actually got to the point where I was doing a shot of meth I found meth on my birthday. Well, I didn't find it. I finally, I swore up and down that I would never do it, and then one day I just let me try it. And it was downhill from there, and I was doing a shot of meth in the morning. My house, to the point where my house was spotless. There was no dirty clothes except for what everybody was wearing. I mean, everything was spotless. And then I do heroin to sleep, and I thought I found the magic combination. So it was
up, down, heroin.
I thought I found the magic combination to be the perfect mom, the perfect wife, do everything, and I thought I had control of it until I didn't. So,
you were on the streets here in Austin,
yes.
Right? So, being female and on the streets, I know, being on the streets is hard enough, but being female and on the streets is, it's night and day. So, how did you cope with being female and being on the street? I guess, how did you survive being on the street as a female?
Being a female on the street is a whole nother world, because you become a target and everything to a lot of, and what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of the men that are on the streets are on the registry. They're convicted sex offenders, and that's why they're on the street, because they can't go anywhere. And when you're a female on the street, you have no protection. Right. And so there were a number of times, I've been raped a few times on the street, and every time, and it's just sleeping was dangerous, because you never knew when you'd wake up and somebody attacking you. I've
heard some people tell me, some of the females here in Austin that's been on the street, that they end up hooking up with a guy just for protection.
You do. Is that because it's kind of like excuse my language, you're with one asshole to keep the rest of assholes away.
Right.
And I did the same. It's just like many of the women are with abusive people that will beat the crap out of them and stuff, but you feel safer. Like, at least I only have to deal with this one creep instead of all the creeps.
So you pretty much, you have to keep a guy around to stay safe.
It helps, yes.
Yeah, that's a shame. And you know, was violence a big thing for you?
It was.
On the street?
It was. I've been dragged back behind Wendy's and stripped naked. It's horrible.
That's a shame.
And I've woken up, like, I've had my ex pay a crackhead $20 to jump me and beat the crap out of me. So I would try to so maybe I would come back to him so he could protect me.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous out there. It was just like, granted, back when I was on the street, the worst you could worry about was getting stabbed, and it's a lot worse now.
So how did you protect yourself? What kind of things did you do to actively protect yourself?
I tried to, of course, the number one rule: you never tell anybody where you camp. You try never sleep. You never sleep exposed. A lot of times, that's where my meth use got really heavy. It was sometimes better not to sleep.
So you just did the drugs to stay awake. So
stay awake to keep yourself, because it was just like, you learn sleep is not a safe thing. Yeah. And then they had safe sleep at the Salvation Army, but that was a joke.
So if you did, obviously you're eventually going to have to try to sleep. Would you, try to find just a hole to crawl off in to hide and sleep?
Yeah. Sometimes when you could go into the arch and put your head down in the garage and get some sleep. Yeah. You try to get some sleep wherever you can on the bus.
I can imagine when you're especially with a female on the street trying to find a safe place you can't get good rest because you're too worried about what's going to happen while you're asleep. That's got to be hard.
And if you're not crazy when you get on the street, you're going to because of the lack of sleep. And
so it affects your mental health.
Oh, it does. Because
sure.
lack of REM sleep will make you go crazy.
Yeah, and then you add drugs on top of that. It's probably a volatile mix.
It is.
So, when you're on the street, what sorts of things did you do to, provide for yourself or, make money to buy food, or what did you do to get by?
That's one good thing about Austin. One thing about Austin is you cannot starve in this town, unless you want to. And the churches and stuff are really good about providing for your clothing, and it's just, there's enough resources and stuff in town to take care of everything. Right. And so I flew a sign and stuff, but that was mostly just to cover my habits.
What was it profitable? Did you make?
Oh yeah, it was definitely. I was very creative with my signs. I'm very artistic and stuff, and so sometimes people would give me money just for the art.
Is it easier for females to make money doing that? Or?
I do believe so. Women do make a lot more money flying signs. People are a little more tender-hearted when it comes to females and stuff and everything. So
I understand. I'm the same way. And it's sad, but
which is sad because there's more men. There's more men on the street and stuff. So.
But and I think a lot of people's problem comes in is when you pull up to the same intersection day after day on the way to work and you see the same guy. I think a lot of people feel frustrated.
I told a friend of mine he flew the same corner for years and was getting mad because he wasn't making the same money. I was like, honey, because they're seeing their money's not getting them anywhere.
Yeah, it's a shame. So. For 8.5 years you're on the street. You become accustomed to being on the street. That's your lifestyle. What was the rock bottom that made you decide that, hey, it's time that I work towards getting off the street?
I just, I got tired.
Yeah.
I got tired, and it just hit me like I didn't want to. I was losing so many friends to overdoses and violence and stuff like that, and it was just the numbers were racking up. And like I said, I've got kids and stuff, and something hit me, and it was just like I didn't want to live like this anymore. Yeah,
that's tough. The ODs and so here in Austin, I always hear that meth is the big drug on the street. Is that your experience too? That meth
K2.
K2.
K2 is, and honestly, it's even more addictive than meth.
Yeah. So I remember a while back down around the Salvation Army and the Arch, a lot of people were getting picked up and taken to the hospital. K2.
Oh yeah, it was. We used to call them the two wagons and everything because it was just like they'd come and pick them up and then take them to the hospital and drop them back off to start all over again.
Right.
But it was just like sad because I had heard, never got it verified, but I heard it cost like the city like a few thousand every time they send them out.
That's crazy.
And it was just like, it was just messed up.
So when I was homeless, this was a lot of years ago, but I stayed a week inside of the Salvation Army in their emergency shelter. And I was offered more drugs in that week than I was ever offered on the street. Now, granted, I was only on the street for about, 6 months, maybe a little bit less, but a lot of drugs in the shelters here in the city. What's been your experience with that?
Oh, it's everywhere. And like the majority of the people that would be hanging around weren't even homeless. They were just there to,
Were they selling
They're
just to
selling.
make money?
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole area down there, it used to be a really bad area, but it seems like that area's kind of cleaned itself up here lately.
Yeah, I go walk around the area just to remind myself every once in a while, and it's definitely not like it used to be.
So when you found yourself homeless, what was one of the hardest, or what was the hardest adjustment for you to life on the street? What was the hardest part for you to get used to, or the changes that you had to make?
Just learning how to survive,
yeah.
And it's like stepping into an entirely different reality.
Right.
I mean, none of the normal social cues or rules come into play, and you have to learn like how to carry yourself, how to behave, there's different rules.
Right.
And simple things like that are no big deal in society, or can really get yourself in trouble with somebody.
So we're different parts of the city here, like on the east side or the south side on the green belts. Were certain parts of the city more violent than others?
I've only been to a couple of different areas, and everywhere I went was pretty violent. Because I try, even nowadays, I'll try to go around and thinking of which areas were the drug areas, and once you're in the drug life, you realize the entire city is entrenched in drugs.
Yeah.
So there is no one area.
Yeah, the drugs, in the homeless population, it's a huge issue. A lot of people that we talk to, and a lot of people through social media and on the internet, they think that drugs it's not a big problem. Addiction is not a big problem in the homeless community, but it's probably one of the main issues. It's
severe issues and stuff, and it is. It's bad.
And I mean, it's not necessarily. I don't think. The drugs may not have led most of the people to the street, but once you're on the street, I think a lot of people start using to cope with the stress.
One of the things, because I've done a lot of reflection and stuff and everything, and I think because when you're on the street, since you do have so much stuff, everything provided to you and stuff, you really don't have the drive. You don't have the need to do anything.
Right.
So it's almost, and humans need to have a purpose and stuff, so it gives you a drive, something to get up and work for in the morning, if that makes sense.
It does.
Because the church is feeding me, the church is showering me, the church washes my clothes, the church does this, the church does that. So I'm just sitting here and I have nothing to do.
Right.
So getting up and going and panhandling for money and doing this and everything, then just to get in and to get your drug at the end, and everything, just so. And plus it helps you escape your reality of being out there.
That's true. I've heard that. I've heard a lot of people say that. It helps them cope. It helps
Escapism.
Everyday life to get away from the stresses. I know when I was on the street, I remember one night I was sleeping up at the church, and I remember these kids from UT, because that church was right by the University of Texas, walking by and looking at you like you're just a piece of dirt on the ground. And it's so hard to get used to, but that's a whole other story.
Well, I said I couldn't figure out which was worse, when they looked at you with disdain or they looked right through you.
Yeah, and both. It's just as bad with both. So once you decided, look, it's time to get off the street. I got to do something for myself. What was that process like? Did you go to the organization, or did they find you?
I had been spending a lot of time at the Trinity Center downtown and everything, and the workers there got me in with integral care.
Okay. And what was the process like? Was it a simple process or?
Oh, it was very simple.
Yeah.
And everything, they want to help, and they want to, like, it's easy to, like, I'm not going to say it's easy to get off the street, but if you work the steps, but they want you to work for it, show that you want it.
Right.
So you have to show up to, appointments, and you have to show up to meetings and stuff like that.
Was it a long process, a waiting time, or was it,
Yeah, it took a while.
Yeah.
And everything. It did take a while. It doesn't seem like it now when I look back on it, but you know how memory does.
Once you got your apartment, you're off the street. We were talking about this earlier about, you spent 8.5 years on the street living a certain way, and now all of a sudden you have an apartment and you have a life, things are back to normal. What was one of the biggest issues with getting back, to normal life, living in your apartment and, doing daily things? What was the hardest part of that for you?
Just acclimating back to normal life and trying to figure out how to do it, because I was used to, like I told you, the first few weeks that I lived in my apartment, I slept on the balcony because it was just so bizarre sleeping indoors. I was used to the fresh air, like just air conditioning and stuff didn't feel natural to me anymore.
Right.
And everything. So I would sleep out on the balcony and stuff until I got.
Took you a while to get used to it.
Took me a while to get used to it and everything. And I even told my caseworker that they need to have a program to help you reacclimate back to, like, civilian life, as I call it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So do you think that more people would be successful in getting off the street if there was a program to help you?
I mean, I still have moments where, like, adulting is hard and everything, because it's like I've never learned how to do it in my regular life, and then I was homeless and stuff, and so it's just like this is the first, like, I've spent my entire life surviving. I never learned how to live.
Right.
And so it's like I almost feel like I need a class to learn how to do everything.
Be a normal,
like
productive
the normal
adult again.
Because, like, I'd be sitting in my apartment, and and it's just like, what do I do?
Yeah, that's
I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
I've never really thought about that, but that's interesting. So, were you when you got your apartment and you were transitioning off the street, were you already clean and sober at that point?
No.
So did they help provide you services, or did you have to basically?
I did it on my own. I did it. I cold turkeyed it. I did. I came to the realization that I didn't want to leave. Like I told you, I didn't want to leave my kids with the legacy of mom died of an overdose, since all my friends were dying and stuff, and I got tired and realized it just wasn't worth it.
Made the decision that it's time to get off. So a lot of people, they have issues once they're coming off the street. They get into housing and they're using drugs. They end up right back on the street. If the city, these organizations that are trying to provide housing, do you think they would be more successful if there was drug addiction services provided?
Very much so.
Yeah, that's I'm not sure why.
Drug addiction and mental health.
Yeah, the mental health is another big one, and they're not providing the services. So, so you think that more
I've been with Integral Care
successful?
for over 10 years, and I'm just now getting therapy after begging for it for years.
Yeah, that's interesting that the city, they in these organizations, they don't provide services. And, it's the same story we hear over and over, where the people are right back out on the street.
Well, if you don't address the mental health problem, they're just going to end up right back where they're at.
For sure. I don't understand it. You would think it almost sounds like common sense. So, well,
the funny thing is even with regular people, everybody's just like, well, why don't you just get help? And it's like health help is not as accessible to everybody as you would think it should be.
So do you go to AA or NA? Do you attend any kind of meetings or anything?
No, I've just been concentrating on working on, like, what led me to where I was, like working through my my past issues and stuff, and figuring out what the root of the issue was.
So if you I don't want to put the bad mojo on you, but if you ended up relapsing, do you think you would be able to stay in housing, or do you think it would lead you back to the street?
I definitely think it would lead me back to the street, because I'm one that I go hard on anything I do. So it's just like, relapsing is not a part of my recovery.
Do you have a support system in place, like family or friends?
I have some friends. I'm helping out my daughter and stuff and everything, and it's just I've been going, like, I'm really proud of myself because I went through some stuff here recently, which any other time I would have relapsed and stuff, and I've been doing really good. And it's just like I just keep reminding myself it may help for a minute, but it's just going to make whatever problems I'm going through that much worse. So it's not worth it.
Yeah, you know, we don't get to talk to a lot of people that have been into housing that are successful. We talk to a lot of people that tried to get into housing, but they ended up back on the streets. But I think you're probably one of the first that I've talked to that's been this successful, which is good.
Well, I plan to stay that way.
it offers people hope. I mean, it's possible. Even without services.
Yeah, I know a lot of times when people lose their housing, it's because, you know, they get off the street and they want to share their blessing and everything, and they got friends and they bring them in, and unfortunately, you've worked hard for this, and it's not, and you want to keep it, but it's no hair off their nose. If, you know, they could, you know, so people will lose their housing for trying to help somebody else.
Yeah.
And
everything. And that I don't understand that, but it's true. It's true, and it, you know, and I don't know. I know. I look at homelessness now versus when I was homeless, and things are so much different today than it was back when I don't know if I would ever be able to survive on the street now.
Yeah.
You know, things are much more dangerous. Drugs are a bigger issue. Different drugs.
No, fentanyl.
Fentanyl.
I'm so grateful I wasn't out here when fentanyl was around.
It'll kill you so quick, and I'm surprised. I'm really surprised Austin doesn't have a bigger issue with fentanyl than what it did, or a more visible issue with fentanyl. Well, Kylee, I appreciate you talking with us. I asked you earlier about if you had a Cash App, and I've got it here, which is $Kylee, MOHR. That's $KYLEE MOHR, and I will put that down in the description as well. If anybody would like to, you know, donate to Kylee here, I'm sure she would very much appreciate it. But Kylee, is there anything else that you want to say, or you want people to know about life on the street, how to survive it?
Just that there are how to survive it. You just have to keep your head up and realize that, you know, as bad as it gets, it can always get better, and don't give up. There's always hope that you can get off the street. I've done it. You can do it too.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like there is an escape.
People like you offer people hope. You know, they see somebody that's been successful and have made their way out of it, and like I said, it's a great thing when you see somebody.
Because I know the hopelessness. Because it's like when you get out there, it just seems like such a huge mountain.
Yeah.
And it feels incredibly hopeless, and you just don't feel like, and that's another reason you'd sink into the drugs, because it's like, what do I have? You know, I'm going to die out here, so might as well hurry. I literally had a low-key death wish while I was on the street.
Yeah, so. And 8.5 years on the street, especially as a woman, I can't imagine, you know, the nightmares that you've dealt with on that time. I know what it was like as a male on the street, and that's bad enough. I just can't imagine.
Well, I learned a lot, and believe it or not, I wouldn't trade it for the world, because I did grow as a person, and I learned a lot, about myself.
You know, if you can survive the street, you can survive anything. I'm going to tell you. That's one. Again, I learned that same thing. If you can survive the street, you're a much stronger person. Like I found out that I was a much stronger person than I ever thought. So, you know, that's one good thing. People that are on the street, they're survivors. They're fighters, and a lot of people don't ever see it that way, but it's true.
That's why I always said, if World War III hit, the people that would have the
round up the homeless.
Like if we had an EMP that like knocked out all the power and stuff, and everybody had to just like survive, like rough it and stuff, the homeless people would be great.
Interesting.
They'd make it.
All right, Kylee. Well, I appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Kylee, she's probably going to start volunteering with us a little bit and doing some work in the camp. So, hopefully that'll help her out, and you know, try to help us out at the same time. So you'll probably be seeing more of Kylee. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.